All right, all right, all right. I'm very, very, very excited for another episode of Beyond the Game. I'm here with Latecia Carino. I believe that's how you say her name. So we're going to hopefully get that correct. And we're going to talk about a game she posted on social media. She's 11 hours time difference. Really, really cool. We worked very hard to get together, coordinate our schedules. Please, before we go on, tell me a little bit about yourself, please.
I'm Leticia, or Leticia, how we call it in Spanish. I'm from Spain. I've been working overseas. This is my 11th year. I started in the US. Actually, I started working as a PE teacher in Spain first. I taught physical education in middle school and high school, and then I moved to the US and I changed a little bit. There was kindergarten position for me over there, bilingual, so I just didn't know much about it at the beginning. I just had to relearn lots of things. It was a very cool experience. Then we moved to the Netherlands, and I was working at a national school there, supporting in grade 2. Then I moved to China and started working in grade 3, and then moved back to what my passion is, which is physical education. And I worked in elementary PE. And then I'm in Cambodia right now, working at a PYP school, IB school, teaching physical education from grades EY. So it's little ones, 3 and 4 years old, and I'm teaching grade 1, 3, and 5. So it's
fantastic. See, it's these conversations that make me realize that I went to college 45 minutes from my house. I now live about 3 miles from my house, and other people have really saw the world and experienced the world. And it makes me a little embarrassed. But anyway, let us get moving. Really cool backgrounds. I'm very excited to talk to you. We got to talk about a minute before this started recording, and I'm going to tell you, very, very excited. So without any further ado, let me share my screen, and then let us talk about the game Sinker Ball. Before we start, you want to tell us a little bit, where did you find Sinker Ball from?
So I first saw a tweet about Sinker Ball, I want to say 3 or 2 years ago, and then I Googled it and I found it in physed.games.com, and so I learned better how to play the game. So the tweets, as you can see, there are 2 teams who are playing against each other, and so one of the teams is pulling those little cargo or those little scooters with a rope, and what they have to do is go from one side to the other of the court, and they have a cone or a bowling pin. The game is with a bowling pin, but adapted with a cone. So the other team has a zone on both sides of the court, and what they have to do is throw balls, dodge balls or foam balls, to try to knock the pin or the cone down. So the kids have to try and walk or run or move whatever way they want from one side to the other, making sure that the cone stays on the scooter. And if it goes down because they just went over a foam ball or because something happened, not just because it got knocked down, they need to go to the other side and they don't count as a point.
And then they turn around and they come back and go the other way?
Yes, yes.
Beautiful. All right. So first, if you do not know phys ed games, and you're watching this, I want to wonder how you came across this but didn't find phys ed games. It's one of the premier places to go. Go on there, type it in your URL. He explains the games really, really well. I love that channel. So really cool website there. Let's go to our standards, right? We always want to link the activity to a standard. You're in Cambodia. Gotta think that you don't really care much about what Shape America says in the world. Is that correct?
Well, we care. It's just different. There are different standards. So we have PYP school and we have 3 big strands. So one is active living, another one is identity, and the other one is interactions. And for this one, for this specific game, I wanted to use the interactions one, also the active living, but specifically the interactions, because I really wanted to have the kids thinking of the best strategy to get the cone or the bowling pin to the other side, if they were on that team, or to knock down the pin, right? So the idea was to have them talking and have every single student voice involved in that. So the standard is demonstrate the skills and tactics, demonstrate the ability to perform and function as an effective member of a team. That was the number one standard that I wanted them to work on. And the other one was related with active living, was the skills for the game and the strategies. So there's two big standards there.
All right, love it. I'm glad you know who Shape America is, and you do care a little bit about what they think, which is really cool. Let's talk a little bit about PYP. I don't mean to get off task here, and I don't want this to get too long, but PYP is a really cool philosophy. Can you talk about that? Just give us a quick overview for those of us who may not know what it is.
Okay, so basically, it's there's different. There's like 6 big units that go across years, and as a phys-ed educator, it's called. We can be an integrator, or we can try to integrate with the classroom teacher. So, for example, it can be how we organize ourselves. It can be one of these units, or how we express ourselves, or this kind of thing. So there's like different ones. And for the how we organize ourselves, we did an integration with Adventure Challenge. So there was ways of integrating FTP. So there's a central idea that drives the unit, and then there's lines of inquiry that help to understand that central idea. And then there's like key concepts that also support, and there's different phases. So it's there's lots of, it's a conceptual learning. It's conceptual learning.
Which I gotta admit, every time I talk to someone who works in the PYP schools, they know their stuff. Their teaching pedagogy is on point. So it is something that I think we should kind of learn from, to be honest. All right, so let's go to the next question. Don't want to deviate from the game. Where in the unit did this fall?
So I was doing 2 different units. So there was one unit that we just finished, was a dance unit, and before we started the next unit, and that was the front load, because you can also do that, like kind of help the students to understand the central idea for the next unit that they're going to get started on. So the students in 3rd grade were going to start doing how we express ourselves unit. And so I did a dance unit using the central idea, so they would understand the central idea better. And so after that unit, we're going to start a gymnastics unit using that same big transdisciplinary theme. That's how they're called. And I thought, we've been doing dance for 6-7 weeks, and we have one more week. I want to do some games in between to have the kids working on something else that they actually need to work on interactions, and I wanted them to also work a little bit on the skills, ball skills. So I had this game in between that wasn't related with any of the units.
I love that. So what I've been doing this year is trying to have the students understand why we do games, and I'll bring them into partner games, small group games, larger group games. Then we do a unit. Then I revisit that small group and large group games, and then really get back to why do we play games? You know, social interaction, enjoyment, all those things. So those are kind of my in-between units of just really fun stuff, re-engaging, novelty, and then going back and visiting. So I love having something sandwiched in between. Boom, quick hitter, ignite the fire, and then roll on. So I think that's really cool. Tell me a little bit about equity. So if I had either a handicap, let's say I was throwing the ball super fast, I didn't like throwing at all. Where's the equity in the game? How do we work on the different skill levels or differentiation?
So simple, like what I already did, changing that bowling pin for a cone to get started, and then making it more challenging. And not everybody would have to have a bowling pin or a cone. You could have both. You could have students, instead of letting them run, if you, for example, have a student, I had a student with spina bifida last year. So I had to adapt lots of games for him. And so something that we did, we played tag games without running. Everybody had to walk. So for example, in this case, we could also have students walking from one place to another, even if they would do fast walk. You know, you could have the best throwers throwing with their less or least strong hands. So if they're using the right hand all the time, maybe you can ask the strongest hand, use the left one. Or you could also start adding different skills. And obviously, so it's not just throwing, but it can be also kicking or hitting. So there's lots of possibilities to work on equity there.
Which I love, because you combine this with another question I do of extension. So really cool. I've done it with the bowling pin. You don't get a lot of speed with a bowling pin. It falls over very quickly. So the cone is a really, really good idea to put on there, much faster. If a kid was, had a little more difficulty throwing, you say switch to the bowling pin. For the other people, when they pull that, if it's too fast, the bowling pin falls over. So it's really slow going across. Give some of our kids on the lower end a little easier opportunity. The cone, you could zip it across, pull it a lot faster. We can mess with distance. We can mess with the size of the ball, the weight of the ball, all the different things that TGFU talks about. So I really, really like that.
Sorry, that I didn't tell you from the beginning that is also part of the game is this that there's some students who can block, and that's very cool because you can have the game you can change the rules of the game anytime, in my opinion, because it's much more fun, and you can also include the kids or the students in that making the rules. I think it's the best because then that way they own the game. That way it's their game, right?
I support you 1,000%.
And that's student agency, right? That's what we want. That we want them their own learning. So one thing that I did, I started with 7 scooters, and I had some classes of 20 or 21 students, which meant that I had more than 7 in each group, right? Mm-hmm. So I had let's say 3 students who did not have a scooter to pull. So then those 3 students could start blocking already. And then as soon as they went back to the other side of the wall, they made it one way, they could switch with their partner. Nice. But also what you can do is that when one of the pins get knocked down, you can leave the scooter down there, and that doesn't count. And then the student who lost their cargo can become a blocker.
Nice.
For others. So these are the strategies to really have the kids thinking of how can we work on making the most of having all the pins getting to the other side of the wall. And it's all this teamwork that I really wanted them to work on. Teamwork, listening to each other. We also have a number of EAL students who is English as an additional language, who are sometimes shy to share because they don't have the vocabulary, they don't know how to say things. And so that's part of the equity as well, that you support those students to be able to have a voice in everybody's conversation. So if it's, and they get together into the last decision of the team kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's something we don't talk about enough is the language barrier, especially if you're not the dominant language. It takes a while to understand what's going on and try to get your voice heard, and then on top of that, confidence. So really, really great points. And then, yeah, with teamwork, you have creativity, the communication part, the critical thinking, everything, the 4-season education that we are looking for there, which I love. All right, so I think we are getting to the end of the lesson. Let's go with the assessment. what did you do to assess your students? We talked about you had your PYP goals that you went with, which are cool. How did you give the student feedback, or how did the students give you your feedback? And that's a little shout out to Terry Drain there.
Okay, so this year I started using the single point rubrics. I think they're very easy for students to understand and for me to assess them as well. So I just had the kids or students thinking of their skills. So this is what is going to be in the report card as well. This is what the standards are. And so I use the I can statements because I think they're kid friendly and they can understand better what they want to say. So I can share my ideas with my team and accept the team decision. I positively respectfully interact with others, which I think it's a very important part, especially with this age that sometimes they get mad for things that. So if the students think that they're there, they just have to check that there's consolidating. If they think that they're a little bit below, they still need to work on that. They just check that, but they can also write down, and that's the important part, what they think why they're developing, why they're not being able to respect. And if they're over that, if they're positively, respectfully interacting with everyone, why they think they're expanding, why they are over that, right? So what did you do to be more than just consolidating? Maybe you were helping student who fell down. I don't know. So
yeah, this is your evidence. So I love this. First, Rich Wiles was one of the people who does the single point rubrics, which I really like on here, which is cool. And I like how if you're consolidating, you just go boom, check mark, you're good. If you're a little below, why are you below? That's going to give us some information on how we can get you to consolidating. If you think you're ahead, why are you ahead? Give me some evidence. Tell me what's going on. Don't just check it. I really like this single point rubric. For the watchers out there, I think you need to go look into that. Really, really cool idea. All right, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. I mean, it's really cool that you did this so far. I think 11 hours difference on our Eastern time and Cambodian time. Before we go, any last messages you want to tell to anybody? And then how can we find you on Twitter or wherever you're at?
Messages is just that let the kids to own the lesson. Sometimes I feel like they ask us things and then we're just like, no, I actually had a plan for this, and they can actually help us to get a better lesson. So listen to student voice and make sure that you have like choices, and also be open-minded to try things. Sometimes they don't work, but sometimes it's fine to fail, because that's what we're telling the kids, like fail but try again. So have this kind of attitude. And yeah, I think that's the message. That, I mean, be sure that you know also that what you want to have the kids working on, assessing them and reflecting on what happened. And
reflection. I feel like you should be on a Voxcast. That's your next step. I'm going to get you in touch with Jorge Rodriguez. We're going to get you on the Voxcast because I feel like I want to go deeper on so many things. Don't want to bore the people on this beyond the game with the activity, but I do really, really want to dig into your background at some point. So we are going to be in touch after this. Thank you very much. Twitter handle real quick for us.
Twitter is at Latecia Carino.
All right, we'll put that in the notes. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you so much.